Okay guys, so I wanted to go over in this video exactly how to know when you are ready to compete, because there's a lot of people out there that they get their interests piqued by the idea of competing. They love training and they want to give it a lot more meaning and have a much more precise and significant goal to work towards. Now this is an amazing thing, and people will often go back and forward with themselves about when they're ready to compete. And I just wanted to point out that there are specific signs that I want you to look for that will tell you when you're ready to compete. Now the problem is everybody always looks at their physique and uses that as their guide to decide whether they're ready to compete or not. And the thing is, everybody wants to be confident when they start out. So they want to wait until they're after the next building phase or the next bulk so they can be X amount of kilograms. Because in their mind they think, well, if I just get big enough, then I'll do well and then I'll be ready to compete. And that's fine logic, but the problem with waiting until you're the biggest, baddest, leanest person on the planet in order to just start out in the sport is you're not really giving yourself a chance to crawl before you walk. And like any other sport, there's ranks in which you move and work your way up in, and you have to allow yourself to be a beginner first. So as long as you've got some relative muscle mass and a half decent shape, and you've got the ability to be committed in order to get stage lean, then you're ready to compete from a physique standpoint. Now, much more important on the other side of things are the psychological elements or considerations. And I feel like this is where you want to start to look for in order to decide whether you're ready to compete or not. Because the thing about signing up to compete is you're not just signing up to step on stage, okay, which is daunting in itself. You're signing up for an entire competition prep that's extremely hard work. And it's something that, yes, you might have dieted for fat loss in the past, it does take it to that next level. So you have to be prepared for the challenge. So the first thing that I would take into consideration is if the idea of that challenge and the idea of the outcome and going through the process and really challenging yourself, if that is more appealing than your next night out or your next social event where there is X amount of temptation to overindulge, that next thing that socially you should be excited for, when the idea of undergoing that challenge is more appealing than the enjoyment you would get from your next night out, that's the first sign that you are ready to compete. Now, the second that I would recommend is always make sure that you've at least been through one fat loss phase, and not just your average mini cut. You want to walk through a fat loss phase throughout some point in your lifting journey where it really challenges you. One that you have a strict amount of cardio to do each week, you have a strict potential meal plan, or at least you're eating routine meals consistently at similar times, one that you're really prioritizing your sleep and you're taking very, very seriously, and you're really taking your training and adherence to a training program to the next level. Because that is essentially a similar setup that you will be on prep. But on prep for a competition, you'll also need to add things like posing into the mix and some other general considerations. So if you've been through a fat loss phase, not just a mini cut, one that is very structured, and it does take you to a position where you get quite lean, doesn't need to be stage lean, but enough to challenge you and make you seriously tired, and enough to pose enough of a challenge that feels significant. A little bit more than just your average mini cut. If you've been through that and you've been successful, and also arguably if you've enjoyed it, you're probably ready to compete. Because the thing about competing and standing on stage is, yes, it's going to take it to that next level, but you don't need to do an exact competition prep, because your motivation to do an average fat loss phase is not going to be the same as when you've got a show coming up, because that added pressure will really bring the best out of you. So if you can do your average fat loss phase and you somewhat enjoy the process, then you'll be absolutely fine on a competition prep. Now, the second thing is you have to understand, or you have to have an understanding of the various phases that you should walk through as a potential bodybuilder, because competing for the first time is not just about stepping on stage and going through the competition prep. You should have the ability to go through a strict or a structured building phase or off season as well. So if you as an individual, as a lifter, as a client, as an athlete, you've got good experience in a very structured environment for both fat loss as the goal and also muscle growth in order to maximize muscle growth as the goal as well, you've got experience in both fields, then you should be ready to compete. Now from there, you've got the psychological box checked off of the appeal of a competition prep is more appealing than the appeal or the excitement of your next night out or social event. You know that if you've got a social event in front of you, with good communication to your loved ones and your friends and dedication to a goal that applies positive pressure in your life, you're going to be fine saying no to the temptation and you'll be able to get through it. So you'll know that for a fact. Now, number two is you will know you're capable of moving through an off season, building required tissue, and you enjoy the process of being structured in that sense. And then similarly for fat loss, if you've been through a fat loss phase that's challenged you, one that's fairly strict and fairly structured in nature, then from there, you've got all three boxes. You just need to remind yourself that if you can do all those things, you have all of the qualities and all of the habits and the mindset of a successful bodybuilder. And you don't need to be an IFBB pro, beg your pardon, in the beginning. You have to allow yourself to just start your journey, turn up, and just use essentially your first show or your first couple of showings as your baseline to progress from. Because at the end of the day, like any sport, it's not one and done. It's year after year improvement, and it's the progression and the journey over time. So if these things have struck a little note, then I hope this has helped. There are several other considerations, such as, is your calendar in the right place? If you're ready to compete in June, does that mean that your run up to June, you're not going to be missing out on anything that is seriously going to be regrettable for you, like your best friend's wedding or something like that? But really, if you dedicate yourself to the idea of competing, it doesn't matter what's in your way, you should be happy to take or let everything take a back step and really focus on this one goal. So if this sounds like you, I would suggest just go for it. Allow yourself to show up. You need to be a beginner like any other sport. Just set a baseline, start your journey, and you'll never look back. So, hope this helps. If you have any further questions, feel free to drop them into the WhatsApp group that I've linked in the bio of the front page of this resource hub, and I'll chat to you in a bit.